Jacques Louis David, French painter whose neoclassical canvases changed the course of art history. Jacques Louis David was born on August 30, 1748 in Paris into a prosperous family. His childhood was marked by tragedy. When he was about 9 years old, his father was killed in a duel, and the boy was raised by 2 uncles. Despite their hopes for him to become an architect, David was drawn relentlessly to drawing from a young age. He filled his school notebooks with sketches and later recalled that during classes he would often hide behind the teacher's chair, drawing instead of listening. Young David's ambition and talent led him into the studio of the fashionable Rococo master François Boucher, though Boucher recognized the tides of changing taste and directed David to the more classical-minded painter Joseph-Marie Vien. Under Vien's guidance and after enrolling in the Académie Royale de Peinture et de Sculpture, Royal Academy, in 1766, David began the journey that would lead him to revolutionize painting. Despite recurring disappointments, for failures in the Academy's official competitions and even a suicidal crisis triggered by frustration, David persevered. In 1774 he finally won the prestigious Prix de Rome, the government scholarship that enabled him to study in Italy and opened the door to future commissions. The years David spent in Rome, 1775 to 1780, proved transformational. Immersed in the ruins of antiquity and studying the works of masters like Nicolas Poussin and followers of the dramatic chiaroscuro tradition of Caravaggio, David absorbed contrasting influences, the serene classical poise of Poussin and the stark realism of the Baroque. Initially skeptical about antiquity, he later admitted that encountering ancient vases, columns, and ruins felt to him like being operated on for cataracts of the eye, unveiling a new clarity of vision. Back in Paris by 1780, David's career accelerated. His painting Belisarius asking alms captured attention, and by 1782 he married Marguerite Picot, a union that brought social connection and financial stability. A few years later, David astonished the art world with one of his most iconic canvases, Oath of the Horatii, 1784. Its frieze-like composition, austere colors, firm outlines and stoic drama marked a radical departure from the frivolous curves and aristocratic indulgence of the Rococo style. Exhibited in the 1785 Salon, the painting was widely hailed as a manifesto of a new art, one rooted in moral seriousness, civic virtue, and classical simplicity. In the years that followed, David further solidified his reputation. Paintings such as The Death of Socrates, 1787, and The Lictors Bringing to Brutus the Bodies of His Sons, 1789, articulated themes of self-sacrifice, moral rectitude, and republican virtue, images that resonated powerfully as France inched toward revolution. When the French Revolution erupted in 1789, David did not remain a passive observer. He joined the most radical political club of the time, the Jacobin Club, and was elected as a deputy to the Revolutionary Parliament. As the revolution deepened, David embraced the role of artist propagandist. In 1792 he voted for the execution of the king, and by 1793, as a member of the committee responsible for art and culture, he effectively became what people called the Robespierre of the brush. In that role he abolished the old Royal Academy, reshaping the system of artistic training and patronage in France. At this politically charged time, David painted one of his greatest and most haunting masterpieces, The Death of Marat, 1793. The work depicted murdered revolutionary journalist Jean-Paul Marat as a martyr, bath-bound and serene, a stark, emotionally potent image stripped of glamour but filled with pathos. It became an emblem of the revolution's ideals and a striking demonstration of how art and politics could merge. But revolution is rarely kind to its own. After the fall and execution of his political ally Maximilien Robespierre in 1794, David was arrested. He spent several months in prison, yet even behind bars, he painted. Among his works was a subtle landscape view from his window and a reflective self-portrait in 1794 that now resides in the Louvre. Upon release after amnesty in 1795, David shifted gears. He devoted himself to teaching and mentoring younger painters. Over the next decades his studio nurtured hundreds of students, including luminaries such as Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres and Antoine-Jean Gros, helping spread the ideals of classical drawing, composition, and the discipline of line across generations. Many historians consider him a founding father of academic art in 19th-century Europe. When Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power, David regained prominence by embracing the new regime, becoming Napoleon's court painter. His dramatic portrayal of Napoleon's grandeur helped define the official visual vocabulary of the empire. Works like Napoleon Crossing the Alps, 1801, and The Mass of the Coronation of Napoleon, 1807, showcased the artist's ability to fuse heroic classical aesthetics with personal ambition, political spectacle, and imperial grandeur. Yet David was conflicted. The very classical austerity that made his early work so powerful by 1800 began to give way to something richer, more ornate, still rooted in neoclassicism, but softer, more decorative. In the late 1790s and early 1800s, for example in The Intervention of the Sabine Women, 1799, David adopted a more graceful, Greek, style, contrasting with the stark, Roman, severity of his earlier canvases. He said that Greek art was defined by noble simplicity and silent greatness in pose as well as in expression. Life under Napoleon, though lucrative and prestigious, marked the beginning of the end of David's dominance. After Napoleon's final defeat in 1815 and the restoration of the Bourbon monarchy, David, too associated with the old regime, went into exile in Brussels. There he spent his final years peacefully teaching, painting smaller mythological pieces, portraits of émigrés and citizens, and working on one of his last great canvases, Mars being disarmed by Venus and the Three Graces, 1822–1824, declared by him to be his final masterpiece. David passed away on December 29, 1825 in Brussels, far from the France that had once declared him its preeminent artist. Because of his revolutionary past and his role in the death of the king, he was not permitted burial on French soil. His heart was interred at the Père Lachaise in Paris, while his body rested in Brussels. Despite exile and political turmoil, Jacques Louis David's legacy endured. He reshaped European painting, shifting it away from Rococo indulgence and toward classical discipline, clarity, and moral gravity. His emphasis on line, composition, and historical subjects helped define neoclassicism, and his pupils carried those principles across Europe, influencing generations. Beyond technique and historical importance, David's life reads like an epic: the starving aspiring artist, rejected and depressed, the young man consumed by drawing at every spare moment, the radical revolutionary wielding a brush as a political weapon, the imperial court painter lavished with honor and commission, the exiled master quietly nurturing new talent in a foreign city. His paintings encapsulated not only stories of ancient Rome or modern revolution, but also his own personal journey, of ambition, suffering, reinvention, and lasting influence. Interesting facts and stories. During his school years he was so obsessed with drawing that he constantly sketched even in class instead of paying attention to lessons. After multiple failures at the academy, his frustration was so deep that he once tried to starve himself, but soon recovered and eventually won the Prix de Rome. While imprisoned in 1794 to 1795 during the backlash against the revolution, David continued painting. He produced a landscape view from his prison window and a self-portrait, proving that art remained his refuge even in adversity. His painting The Death of Marat turned a gruesome assassination into a serene, saint-like depiction of martyrdom, redefining how political tragedy could be rendered in art. Even in exile, David remained active. His final grand painting, Mars being disarmed by Venus and the Three Graces, was completed in Brussels, and he declared it would be his last. For generations of artists that came after him, Jacques Louis David became more than a painter. He was a paradigm, a man who turned adversity into mastery, who made his brush a sword of conviction, and whose vision reshaped the very way history, heroism, and humanity could be depicted on canvas.